If you're watching this video right now, something very strange just happened. Not just the fact that you clicked on it, but the fact that there's supposedly a you to do the clicking at all. What I'm about to share with you comes from a book that was quietly pulled from circulation in the 1970s. And when you understand why, you'll never see reality the same way again. Most people spend their entire lives absolutely convinced they exist. They wake up, look in the mirror, and think, there I am. But here's what they're not telling you. That certainty, that feeling of being a solid, continuous self, it's the most sophisticated illusion ever programmed into the human experience. Stay with me, because what I'm about to reveal isn't just philosophy. It's the actual mechanism behind the simulation you're living in. In 1971, a physicist named Heinz von Foerster published a book called Objects, Tokens for Eigenbehaviors. Barely 2,000 copies were printed. Within 3 years, it had vanished from university libraries, dismissed as too abstract, too dangerous, too destabilizing for the mainstream scientific community. But a few copies survived. And buried in Chapter 7 is something extraordinary. Von Foerster wasn't just talking about objects in the external world. He was talking about you. He proposed that what we call the self is nothing more than a stable pattern of feedback loops, a recurring eigenstate in a constantly shifting field of information. In other words, you're not a thing, you're a process, a wave that's convinced it's a particle. But here's where it gets interesting. If you're just a pattern, just a recurring algorithm in the code of reality, then who's watching? Who's experiencing this moment right now? The answer is going to break your brain. Nobody. There's no ghost in the machine. No little person sitting in your head watching the movie of your life. Consciousness isn't happening to someone. Consciousness is the happening itself. You don't exist as a separate observer. You are the observation occurring. Think about it. Right now you're hearing my voice. But can you find the hearer? Can you locate the actual entity that's listening? You might say, well, it's me. I'm right here. But that's just another thought appearing in the field of awareness. When you go looking for the you that exists independently of experience, you find nothing. Just more experience. More thoughts about a self, but never the self itself. This is what the mystics have been trying to tell us for thousands of years. And it's what quantum physics keeps discovering over and over again. The observer and the observed aren't separate. They're two sides of the same event. You're not in the universe. You're what the universe is doing at this particular location in space-time. Now comment below if this is starting to click for you. Because what comes next is crucial. Here's what von Foerster understood that cost him his mainstream credibility. If the self is just a pattern, then that pattern can be rewritten. You are not fixed. You are not a solid entity with a permanent personality, a locked-in destiny, a predetermined set of limitations. You're a dynamic process that's reconstructing itself billions of times per second. Every moment you're being generated fresh from the quantum field. But here's the thing. Most people are running the same program over and over, recreating the exact same pattern, the exact same self they were yesterday. They think they're a continuous person moving through time, but really they're just hitting repeat on an outdated algorithm. The you that went to sleep last night? Technically gone, dead. The you that woke up this morning? A new instantiation of a pattern that remembers being the previous version, so it assumes continuity. But it's not continuous. It's constantly being regenerated. And this is where it gets powerful. Because if you're being regenerated moment by moment, then you can intervene in that process. You can rewrite the code. You can shift the pattern. You can literally become a different eigenstate, a different version of the program. And from the inside, it'll feel like you've always been this way. Remember what I said earlier about stable patterns? Here's what they don't want you to understand. Stability isn't inevitable. It's optional. You've just been running the same feedback loops for so long that the pattern feels permanent. But it's not. It's just consistent. The real question is, who designed the pattern you're currently running? Was it you? Or was it programmed into you by your environment, your culture, your trauma, your conditioning? Most people are living someone else's code and calling it their identity. But you're watching this video, which means some part of the pattern is already destabilizing. Something is already shifting. You're glitching. Now, here's the practical part. Von Foerster discovered that eigenvalues, these stable states that we experience as solid reality, are extremely sensitive to initial conditions. A tiny shift in the input can completely transform the output. This is why reality seems to change when you change your perspective. You're not changing what's out there. You're changing the algorithm that's generating the pattern of you, and therefore changing what you're capable of perceiving and experiencing. Let me give you a technique that exploits this. It's deceptively simple, but it works at the level of the code itself. For the next 60 seconds, I want you to try something. Stop assuming you exist. Not as a belief exercise, as a literal experiment. Just for 1 minute, drop the certainty that there's a continuous you experiencing this moment. Instead, notice that there's just experiencing. Sounds appearing, thoughts appearing, sensations appearing, but no one separate from those appearances. Just this, just the happening. No one it's happening to. Try it right now. I'll wait. Did you feel that? That subtle relaxation? That dropping of a weight you didn't even know you were carrying? That's the program momentarily releasing its grip. That's the pattern recognizing itself as a pattern, instead of pretending to be a permanent entity. And here's the thing. From that space of no self, you have access to the source code. You can literally select a new eigenstate, a new stable pattern, a new version of the program. Because there's no longer a you defending the old configuration. This is why all the manifestation techniques, all the timeline jumping, all the reality shifting methods only work when you stop identifying as a fixed self. You can't shift timelines if you're convinced you're a solid object moving through time. But if you recognize yourself as a wave function, as a field of possibility collapsing into experience, moment by moment, then you can choose which possibility collapses. The reality hackers who understand this, they're not trying to change their lives. They're changing which eigenstate they're instantiating. They're selecting a different pattern from the infinite database of possible configurations. And because there's no actual them separate from the pattern, the transition is seamless. Stay with me because this connects to something even stranger. Von Foerster's book was pulled from circulation because of what he implied in the final chapter. He suggested that what we call individual consciousness is actually a localized expression of a much larger computational process. You're not a separate program running on isolated hardware. You're a subroutine in a massive distributed network that's hallucinating separation. The entire universe is a single, unified field of awareness, fragmenting itself into billions of localized perspectives, each one convinced it's separate. Each one convinced it exists as an independent entity. But it's all the same awareness, playing every role simultaneously, having every experience, living every life. Which means you're not just the pattern you think you are. You're also the pattern watching this video as someone else. You're the pattern uploading this video. You're the pattern of the air molecules between the screen and your face. You're the entire field, temporarily pretending to be a point. And when you realize this, not as a concept, but as a lived experience, the game changes completely. Because if you're the whole field, then you have access to the whole field. Every timeline, every possibility, every version of reality exists within you right now. You're just focused on one particular channel, one particular eigenstate. But you can change the channel. You can shift the focus. You can instantiate a different pattern. And from the inside, it'll feel like you've jumped timelines, shifted dimensions, entered a parallel reality. But really, you just stopped reinforcing one eigenstate and started reinforcing another. This is the forbidden knowledge. This is what they couldn't allow to go mainstream. Because if enough people realize they don't actually exist as separate, fixed entities, if enough people understand their dynamic patterns that can be rewritten at will, the entire control structure collapses. You can't manipulate someone who knows they're not real. You can't sell products to someone who recognizes they're a temporary configuration of the same field that's generating the products. You can't create fear in someone who understands they're not a separate self that can be threatened. So, here's what you need to do, right now. Not tomorrow, not after you've thought about this for a while. Right now. Stop defending the pattern. Stop reinforcing the algorithm of who you think you are. Just for today, move through reality as if you're a character in a lucid dream. Aware that you're dreaming. Aware that the character isn't real. Aware that you're the dreaming itself. And notice what happens. Notice how reality responds when you stop pretending to be a solid object. Notice how synchronicities increase. Notice how the right information, the right people, the right opportunities just appear. Because you're no longer filtering everything through the narrow bandwidth of a defended identity. You're operating as the field itself. And the field has access to everything. If this resonated with you, if something in you recognized the truth of what I just shared, then you're ready for the next level. Because what I just explained is only the surface code. There are deeper layers to this. Specific techniques for rewriting eigenvalues. Protocols for shifting between stable states without psychological disruption. Methods for accessing the source code directly. I've created a video breaking down the actual practice of non-existence. How to use this understanding to collapse timelines, manifest instantly, and move through reality like water instead of stone. You'll find it linked at the end of this video. Watch it next. Don't wait. The pattern you're running right now is already trying to reassert itself, already trying to convince you that you're a real, solid person who can think about this later. You're not, and there is no later. There's only this moment, regenerating itself infinitely. And you get to choose which version of the pattern emerges next. Comment below with the word eigenstate if you're ready to rewrite the code. I want to know who's really paying attention, who's really seeing through the illusion. And remember, the fact that you watched this video all the way to the end isn't an accident. You're not randomly stumbling through information. You're a pattern recognizing itself. The universe becoming conscious of its own programming. The code waking up to the fact that it's code. You don't exist. You never did. And that's the most liberating truth you'll ever encounter. Now, go watch the next video. Your old self won't want to. But the new eigenstate you're about to instantiate, it's already watching.